The wedding that never was. The wedding guests expected tears of joy. Instead, they watched the bride quietly remove her engagement ring before walking away from the altar. Nobody tried to stop her. They simply stood in stunned silence as she handed the bouquet to her maid of honor, smoothed the front of her dress, and disappeared through the side door of the church without looking back. The groom never came, but to understand why, you have to go back several months. Emily had always imagined her wedding would be simple. She wasn't interested in lavish venues or celebrity-style celebrations. All she wanted was the man she loved, the people who mattered most, and a day everyone would remember for the right reasons. She met Daniel 6 years earlier while volunteering at a local charity fundraiser. He was funny without trying to be, patient, dependable, the sort of man who remembered birthdays, carried shopping without being asked, and never let her walk home alone after dark. Within 2 years, they had bought a small house together. By the 4th year, they were talking about children. By the 6th, they were planning their wedding. Their families blended surprisingly well. Emily's parents adored Daniel. His parents treated Emily like the daughter they'd never had. Family barbecues became regular events. Christmases alternated between houses. Everything appeared exactly as it should. Emily's older brother, Ryan, had always been protective of her. They had drifted apart slightly after he married Claire, but nothing unusual. Life simply became busy. Ryan and Claire had been married for nearly 8 years. They seemed solid, comfortable, the kind of couple who finished each other's sentences. Claire often joked that Ryan was hopeless around the house but brilliant at making her laugh. Nobody questioned it. Nobody suspected anything. As the wedding drew closer, excitement filled both families. The venue was booked, the flowers chosen, the seating plan revised what felt like 100 times. There were the usual little disagreements over who should sit where, but nothing worth remembering. One tiny moment, however, made several guests laugh. As everyone gathered for the rehearsal and checked the seating chart, someone noticed another guest shared the exact same surname as Ryan. "Oh," one aunt whispered. "Is he another one of the family?" Ryan chuckled before Emily could answer. "No relation at all," he said. "Just one of those strange coincidences." The guest overheard the conversation and grinned. "I'm glad we cleared that up now," he joked. "Imagine the confusion if anything dramatic happened tomorrow." Everyone laughed. It was forgotten within minutes. Looking back, Emily would later think about that moment often. It was the last time everyone laughed together without knowing their lives were about to change forever. That evening, the rehearsal dinner was held at a country hotel just outside town. Wine flowed freely. Friends gave embarrassing speeches. Daniel looked relaxed, although Emily noticed him checking his phone more often than usual. "Everything okay?" she asked quietly. He smiled almost too quickly. "Just work." She accepted the answer. After all, she trusted him completely. When the evening came to an end, guests drifted back to their rooms. Emily kissed Daniel goodnight. "See you tomorrow," she whispered. "I can't wait." Neither of them realized those would be the last words they would ever speak as an engaged couple. Sometime after midnight, Daniel left his hotel room. No one noticed. The corridors were quiet. The reception desk was unmanned for several minutes while the night porter helped another guest. By sunrise, Daniel had still not returned. Emily woke first. At first she wasn't worried. Perhaps he'd gone for breakfast with friends. Perhaps he'd slept in another room after drinking too much. She called his phone. It rang. No answer. Again. Nothing. By 8 o'clock, the best man was searching the hotel. By 8:30, both families had joined in. There was no sign of Daniel anywhere. Then someone realized another person was missing. Ryan. Emily frowned. "That's odd," she murmured. Claire looked puzzled. "He wasn't in our room this morning either. I thought he'd gone to help Daniel." No one knew where either man had gone. The laughter from the night before had vanished. Something felt wrong. Very wrong. Outside, the first wedding guests were beginning to arrive. Inside, two families were about to discover a truth that would destroy them forever. By 9 o'clock, the atmosphere inside the hotel had changed completely. The bridal suite, which should have been filled with laughter, hairspray, and champagne, had become painfully quiet. Emily sat in front of the mirror in her wedding dress, staring at her reflection. She had stopped looking at her phone every few seconds. There were no missed calls, no messages, no explanation. Outside her room, the best man, Oliver, was doing everything he could to stay calm. "I've checked every room I can get into," he told Daniel's father. "His car's still here." "What about CCTV?" Daniel's father asked. "The hotel manager is checking." Downstairs, guests were beginning to arrive. Some assumed the ceremony had simply been delayed. Others whispered that perhaps the groom had been taken ill. Nobody imagined the truth. Claire sat alone in the breakfast room, turning a cup of coffee around in circles without taking a sip. Ryan had never disappeared like this before. He always answered his phone. Always. She dialed again, straight to voicemail. Emily's mother tried to reassure everyone. "They're probably together somewhere. Maybe Daniel panicked and Ryan's talking some sense into him." It sounded reasonable. No one wanted to believe anything else. The hotel manager eventually returned carrying a tablet. "I think we've found them leaving." Everyone crowded around. The footage showed Daniel walking through reception just after midnight. Several seconds later, Ryan followed. Neither man appeared drunk. Neither seemed upset. They walked out together, climbed into Ryan's car, and drove away. Silence filled the room. Claire frowned. Why didn't he tell me? No one had an answer. The hotel contacted local police, explaining that although no crime had been committed, there was concern because a wedding was due to begin within hours and neither man could be contacted. Using Ryan's mobile signal, officers eventually located the car outside a small hotel 20 minutes away. Daniel's father volunteered to go. Claire insisted she was coming too. Emily stood up. "I'm coming." Her father gently placed a hand on her shoulder. "No. I need to know. I know. But you shouldn't be the one to find out." She wanted to argue. Instead, she sat back down. The drive to the second hotel felt endless. Daniel's father barely spoke. Claire stared out of the window, trying to convince herself there had to be an innocent explanation. Perhaps Daniel had suffered a panic attack. Perhaps Ryan had taken him somewhere quiet to calm him down. Anything else seemed impossible. When they arrived, the receptionist recognized the names immediately. "Yes," she said carefully. "They're still checked in." The words landed like stones. "Together?" Daniel's father asked. The receptionist hesitated. "They booked one room." Neither of them spoke. She handed over the room number. Daniel's father knocked first. No answer. He knocked harder. Still nothing. Eventually, a sleepy voice called from inside. "Just a minute." The door opened. Daniel stood there wearing yesterday's shirt, his face drained of color. Behind him, Ryan appeared. Claire felt her knees buckle. Daniel didn't even try to deny it. Nobody needed him to. Everything was written across their faces. Claire whispered one word. "No." Ryan stepped forward. "It isn't what." "Don't." She had never raised her voice at him before. "Don't insult me." Daniel looked towards Emily's future father-in-law. "I'm sorry." Those two words only made everything worse. Claire turned to Ryan. "How long?" He couldn't answer. "How long?" His shoulders slumped. "Almost a year." The corridor became impossibly still. Daniel's father closed his eyes. "A year." Ryan nodded. "We tried to stop." Claire laughed bitterly. "Tried. We ended it more than once. But you always went back." Daniel finished quietly. Neither realized how cruel those words sounded. Claire stared at the two men she thought she knew. "You've destroyed 4 lives." No one argued, because she was right. Back at the wedding venue, Emily was still waiting. Every car pulling into the car park made her heart race. Every passing minute made her stomach tighten. Then she saw her parents walking towards her. Alone. She searched behind them. Daniel wasn't there. Neither was Ryan. The look on her mother's face told her everything. Emily slowly stood. What happened? Nobody answered. What happened? Her father swallowed hard. Daniel isn't coming. Why? Another silence. Then her mother quietly said the words that would echo in Emily's mind for years. He was with your brother. Emily frowned. I know. He was helping him. Her mother began crying. No, not helping. It took several seconds for the meaning to reach her. When it did, everything inside her seemed to stop. Her legs gave way. Her father caught her before she hit the floor. Around them, the music playing through the speakers continued as if nothing had happened. Guests chatted. Children laughed outside. The florist adjusted flowers near the altar. For a few strange moments, the world carried on exactly as planned. While Emily's entire future disappeared in front of her, the church bells rang anyway. Not because anyone had asked them to. Not because a wedding was about to begin. Simply because the clock had reached 10 o'clock. Each chime seemed louder than the last. Inside the bridal room, Emily sat motionless. Her bouquet rested beside her on the dressing table, untouched. Someone knocked gently. It was the wedding coordinator. I'm so sorry, she said softly. People are starting to ask what they'd like us to tell the guests. Emily stared at the floor. I'll tell them. You don't have to. Yes, Emily whispered. I do. The church was almost full. Children fidgeted in the pews. Older relatives smiled as they waited for the ceremony to begin. Friends quietly checked their watches. The organist stopped playing as Emily stepped through the side door. Every head turned. There was no music, no bridesmaids, no groom waiting at the altar. Just Emily, still wearing her wedding dress. She took a slow breath. I'm sorry. Her voice cracked almost immediately. I'm so sorry everyone came all this way. Silence. The wedding isn't happening. Confused murmurs spread through the church. There are family circumstances. She stopped herself. She could have lied. She could have said Daniel had been taken ill. She could have spared herself the embarrassment. Instead, she lifted her head. My fiancé spent the night with my brother. Gasps echoed around the church. Someone dropped a handbag. An elderly aunt covered her mouth. Emily felt strangely calm. I won't be answering questions today. She slipped the engagement ring from her finger, placed it gently on the front pew, then walked back down the aisle completely alone. Nobody tried to stop her. Outside, whispers spread through the crowd like wildfire. Some people refused to believe it. Others insisted there had to be some misunderstanding. But those closest to both families knew. The expressions on Daniel's parents' faces said everything. Claire emerged from a separate car a few minutes later. She wasn't crying anymore. She looked exhausted. Ryan followed several steps behind. When he saw Emily standing outside the church, he hesitated. Em. She turned towards him. For several seconds, neither of them spoke. Finally, Ryan managed to say the only words he could think of. I'm sorry. Emily looked at him as though she had never seen him before. You're my brother. I know. You were supposed to protect me. His eyes filled with tears. I never meant. She interrupted him. Don't tell me you never meant to hurt me. He lowered his head. It just happened. Emily laughed bitterly. No. She stepped closer. It happened once. Then it happened twice. Then you chose it again. And again. And again. Her voice remained calm, almost frighteningly calm. You had hundreds of opportunities to stop. Ryan couldn't answer, because she was right. Daniel approached cautiously. His face was pale. I need to explain. Emily turned towards him. No. Please. No. I loved you. She looked directly into his eyes. If you had loved me, we wouldn't be standing here. He reached out instinctively. She stepped backwards. Don't. The single word cut deeper than shouting ever could. I don't ever want you to touch me again. Daniel slowly let his hand fall. I'll spend the rest of my life regretting this. Emily nodded. I hope you do. Claire had remained silent throughout. Finally, she walked towards Ryan. She removed her wedding ring, held it in her palm for a moment, then placed it into his hand. "I don't hate you." Ryan looked surprised. "I pity you." She turned away. "Claire." She stopped without looking back. "You didn't just lose your wife today. You lost your best friend." Then she walked away. Ryan made no attempt to follow. Most guests quietly left over the next hour. Some hugged Emily. Others simply squeezed her hand. Nobody knew the right thing to say. The reception venue offered to serve the meal anyway rather than waste the food. At first, Emily refused. Then Daniel's mother approached her. Her face was red from crying. "Please." Emily looked confused. "The staff have worked so hard. They've prepared all this." She glanced around the beautifully decorated room. Flowers, candles, place cards, months of planning. Instead of dancing and speeches, guests sat together sharing stories, comforting one another and trying to make sense of something that never really would make sense. The wedding cake was cut, not to celebrate a marriage, but because throwing it away somehow felt even sadder. That evening, Emily returned home alone. She carefully unzipped her wedding dress, hung it back inside its protective cover, then placed it at the back of the wardrobe. She never looked at it again. Her phone continued vibrating. Friends, extended family, unknown numbers. She ignored everyone. Then another message appeared. "Ryan, please let me explain." Delete. Another. "You're still my sister." Delete. Another. "I love you." She finally replied. Just one sentence. "I don't have a brother anymore." She blocked his number. Then Daniel's messages started. She blocked him too. By midnight, both men had disappeared from her life, at least digitally. Emotionally, she knew they would haunt her for years. She climbed into bed fully expecting to cry herself to sleep. Instead, she simply stared at the ceiling. The silence was almost worse than the tears. Outside, rain began tapping gently against the bedroom window. The same room where wedding decorations had been stacked only days before. The same room where she and Daniel had once talked excitedly about their future. Now it felt like someone else's life. She closed her eyes and made herself one promise. No matter how long it took, she would survive this. She just had no idea yet that surviving was only the beginning. The first few weeks after the wedding were the hardest. Not because Emily missed Daniel. That surprised her. For years, she had believed losing him would destroy her. She thought she would wake up every morning desperate to hear his voice, desperate for him to explain, desperate to understand how the person she trusted most could betray her so completely. But the person she missed wasn't Daniel. It was the man she thought Daniel was. She missed the future they had planned. She missed the house filled with laughter they had talked about. She missed the version of herself who believed she was safe. That was the cruelest part. The person she was grieving had never truly existed. For the first month, Emily barely left the house. The neighbors knew something had happened. They had seen the wedding cars. They had seen the guests arriving. They had seen everyone leave hours later looking devastated. But nobody asked questions. For that, Emily was grateful. She couldn't handle sympathy. Every kind word felt like another reminder. Her mother brought food over almost every evening. Her father fixed small things around the house that didn't need fixing. They were trying to help in the only ways they knew how. One night, while sitting quietly at the kitchen table, her mother reached across and held her hand. "You don't have to be strong all the time." Emily looked down. "I don't know who I am anymore." Her mother squeezed her fingers. "You are still you." Emily wanted to believe that, but she wasn't sure. The truth about Daniel and Ryan eventually spread beyond the family. At first, Emily hated that. She hated knowing strangers knew the most painful moment of her life. But after a while, she realized something. People moved on. The story that felt like it would define her forever became yesterday's gossip. Everyone else carried on. And slowly, so did she. Ryan tried to contact her through other people. Her father refused to pass on messages. Her mother struggled with it. He really is sorry. Emily looked at her. I know. You know? Yes. That surprised her mother. Then why won't you speak to him? Emily thought about the question. Because the answer wasn't simple. I believe he's sorry. She paused. But sorry doesn't undo what happened. Her mother nodded quietly. Emily wasn't punishing him. She wasn't trying to hurt him. She was protecting herself. Claire filed for divorce 3 months after the wedding. There were no dramatic court battles. No public arguments. Just two people who had built a life together and realized there was nothing left to save. Claire moved away. Before she left, she sent Emily one final message. I don't know if you'll ever forgive him. I don't know if I'll ever forgive him. But I want you to know something. I never knew. Emily read the message several times. She believed her. That somehow made everything even sadder. Because there were so many people hurt by two decisions made in secret. Daniel tried harder than Ryan. Flowers arrived. Letters arrived. Apologies arrived. Emily returned every single thing. Eventually, he stopped. Not because he stopped feeling guilty. Because he finally understood that his guilt wasn't something Emily had to carry. The last message she received from him came almost a year after the wedding. I know I don't deserve forgiveness. I just hope one day you remember the good parts too. Emily stared at the words for a long time. Then she deleted them. Not because the good parts hadn't existed. They had. That was what made it painful. A person could love you and still hurt you. A person could make beautiful memories with you and still destroy everything. Both things could be true. A year after the wedding that never happened, Emily made a decision. She was going to sell the house. At first, the thought terrified her. Every room held memories. The kitchen where Daniel cooked badly but proudly. The garden where they spent summer evenings. The spare bedroom they had once planned to turn into a nursery. But eventually she realized something. The house wasn't holding their memories. It was holding her pain. The day she signed the papers, she stood outside for a few minutes before leaving. She expected sadness. Instead, she felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. Relief. With the money from the house, Emily bought somewhere smaller. A little cottage on the edge of a village. It needed work. The paint was old. The garden was overgrown. The kitchen cupboards had clearly been there longer than she had. But when she unlocked the door for the first time, she smiled. Nobody had ever hurt her there. Nobody had broken promises there. It was completely hers. She painted the walls herself. She planted flowers. She bought furniture because she liked it, not because it matched someone else's taste. Slowly, she began building a life that belonged only to her. The first morning she drank coffee in her own garden, she realized something. For the first time in years, she wasn't waiting for something to happen. No wedding, no betrayal, no apology, no explanation, just peace. She didn't know it yet, but the next chapter of her life was about to begin, and it would start with a muddy dog, a stranger's apology, and a friendship she never expected. The first thing Emily noticed about her new life was how quiet it was. At first, the silence felt strange. For years, she had lived surrounded by another person's routines. Daniel leaving his shoes by the door. Daniel humming while making coffee. Daniel asking what they were having for dinner. She used to think those little things were proof of a happy life. After everything happened, she realized some of those things had simply become noise she never questioned. Now, when she woke up, the day belonged entirely to her. At the beginning, that freedom frightened her. She had spent so long planning a future with someone else that she didn't know what she wanted when nobody else was involved. So she started small. She bought a new mug because she liked the color. She rearranged the living room because she wanted the sofa facing the garden. She planted flowers she had always liked but never bought because Daniel thought they were too much work. Little choices. Small acts of independence. But every one of them reminded her that she was finally making decisions for herself. The cottage slowly became a home. The garden that had once been a patch of weeds became her favorite place. She spent weekends pulling out old plants and replacing them with colorful flowers. She learned how to fix small things herself. She watched online tutorials when a cupboard hinge broke. She laughed when she accidentally painted one wall the wrong color and had to start again. Nobody was there to criticize. Nobody was there to tell her she was doing it wrong. For the first time in years, mistakes were just mistakes. They weren't arguments. They weren't failures. They were simply part of learning. Her family noticed the change. Her father was the first to say it. "You seem different." Emily smiled. "Is that good?" He nodded. "Very." Her mother looked around the cottage one afternoon while they drank tea. "You've made this place yours." Emily looked around. She had every photograph, every cushion, every little decoration. It was a reflection of her, not a shared compromise, not something chosen because someone else liked it. Just her. Ryan remained completely out of her life. Months turned into years. Occasionally she heard things through relatives. He had moved away. He had divorced Claire. He was working somewhere new. He was trying to rebuild. Emily never asked for details. At one time she thought she would always hate him. But hate required energy. And slowly, she stopped wanting to spend any of her energy on him. The anger faded. The hurt didn't disappear completely. Some wounds don't, but they become scars. A reminder of something painful that happened, not something that is still happening. Nearly 3 years after the wedding disaster, Emily started walking regularly. It began because she wanted to get healthier. Then it became something she genuinely enjoyed. There was a long walking trail near the village, surrounded by trees and open fields. It became her favorite place. She loved the peacefulness, the fresh air, the feeling of being somewhere nobody knew her history. One Saturday morning, while walking along the trail, she heard someone shouting, "Max, come back!" A large golden Labrador came running around the corner. He was covered in mud, completely delighted with himself. Before Emily could move, the dog dropped a muddy tennis ball directly at her feet. She looked down, then at the dog, then at the person running towards them. A man appeared a few seconds later, slightly out of breath. "I'm so sorry," Emily laughed. "Your dog seems to think I invited him." The man smiled. "He's convinced everyone he meets exists purely to throw that ball." The dog looked proudly at them both, as if he agreed. "I should apologize," the man said. "Max has no understanding of personal space." Emily looked at the happy dog. "He's all right." The man smiled. "I'm Mark." "Emily." They shook hands. It was simple, nothing dramatic, no instant connection, no feeling that the universe had suddenly changed direction. Just two strangers meeting on a walking trail because a dog had decided to make a new friend. Over the next few weeks, Emily saw Mark again, sometimes on purpose, sometimes by coincidence. Although after the fourth accidental meeting, they both laughed. "I think Max is arranging these," Mark joked. Emily smiled. "I think Max just likes attention." "That too." They started walking together. At first, their conversations were ordinary. Work, the weather, the village, the dog. Emily liked that. There was no pressure. Mark didn't ask personal questions. He didn't push when she was quiet. He didn't try to fix her. He simply enjoyed spending time with her. That was something Emily hadn't realized she needed. Someone who wasn't trying to become her whole world. Someone who was happy just to be part of it. One evening, sitting outside her cottage with a cup of tea, Emily realized she had gone the entire day without thinking about Daniel. Not once. The discovery surprised her. For years, her past had followed her everywhere. Now it was becoming something behind her. Not erased, not forgotten, just behind her. She looked across the garden. The flowers she planted were beginning to bloom. The house felt warm. Her life felt peaceful. And somewhere along the way, without noticing, she had started becoming happy again. Emily was careful. That was the first thing Mark noticed about her. Not cautious in a cold way. Not distant, just careful. like someone who had once stepped onto thin ice and now checked every step before moving forward. He didn't know the full story at first. He only knew that sometimes she became quiet when conversations turned towards relationships. Sometimes she changed the subject when people talked about weddings. Sometimes, when someone mentioned betrayal or dishonesty, her expression changed for just a second. Most people wouldn't have noticed. Mark did, but he never asked. That was one of the things Emily appreciated most about him. He didn't treat her like she was damaged. He didn't look at her like something needed fixing. He simply accepted that there were parts of her story she wasn't ready to share. Their friendship grew naturally. There were no dramatic declarations, no rushing, just small moments, coffee after their walks, conversations that lasted longer than either intended, messages asking if Max wanted company on his morning route. Emily joked that she was only being invited because of the dog. Mark pretended to be offended. That's unfair. She raised an eyebrow. Is it? He looked at Max. The dog was sitting proudly between them. All right, maybe slightly. Emily laughed, and she realized something that surprised her. She laughed more around Mark than she had in years. Not polite laughter. Not the kind she used when she wanted people to think everything was fine. Real laughter. The kind that came without effort. One rainy afternoon, they sat in Emily's cottage drinking tea while Max slept on the floor. Mark looked around the room. You know, this place feels exactly like you. Emily smiled. What does that mean? I don't know. He looked at the plants on the windowsill. The garden is a little wild. She laughed. Thank you. I mean it in a good way. He smiled. Everything here feels chosen. Like you didn't buy things because you were supposed to. You bought them because they made you happy. The comment stayed with her. Because he was right. For years, Emily had built a life around what she thought she should want. Now she was finally living one she actually wanted. Eventually, Emily told him, not everything at once, not in one dramatic conversation, came out slowly, a little piece here, another piece months later. They were sitting beside the river one evening when she finally told him about Daniel, about the wedding, about Ryan, about the betrayal. She expected pity. She expected awkward silence. Instead, Mark simply listened. When she finished, she looked down. I know it's a lot. He shook his head. It's not too much. She looked at him. Most people would say it explains why I'm difficult. Mark frowned. You're not difficult. You don't know that. I do. He looked towards the water. You trusted people who should have protected that trust. That changed you. It doesn't make you difficult. Emily felt tears forming. Not because she was sad. Because nobody had ever said it that way before. The first time Mark held her hand, it wasn't during some perfect romantic moment. They were walking Max through the village. It was cold. The path was muddy. Max had managed to get dirty despite the lack of anywhere obvious to get dirty. Emily was laughing at him when Mark reached over and took her hand. Then he immediately looked nervous. Sorry. She looked down at their hands. Why are you apologizing? I don't know. I just thought maybe. He stopped. Emily squeezed his hand. Don't stop. And that was the moment she knew. Not that she was healed. Not that the past didn't matter. But that she was ready to let something new exist beside it. Their relationship wasn't perfect. Emily didn't expect it to be. Perfect was what people claimed before everything fell apart. Real was better. Real meant talking when something bothered them. Real meant admitting fears. Real meant choosing each other every day. Mark never promised her that nothing bad would ever happen. He promised something much more valuable. That if something did happen, they would face it honestly. Together. 3 years after they first met, Emily stood in her garden watching Mark and Max chase each other around the grass. She smiled. There had been a time when she thought happiness belonged to someone else. That it was something she had lost forever. Now she understood. Sometimes life doesn't give you back what you lost. Sometimes it gives you something you never knew you needed. And for Emily, that was enough. When Mark proposed, Emily almost laughed. Not because she didn't want to say yes, because for a moment, she couldn't believe how different this moment felt. There was no panic, no pressure, no feeling that she was stepping into something she couldn't escape. Just warmth, just love, just two people standing in a garden they had built together. It was a quiet Sunday morning, the kind they had come to love, the kind where nothing important was supposed to happen. Max was lying under the apple tree, watching them with the same serious expression he had worn since the day he first decided Emily was his favorite person to throw a ball for. Emily had been watering the flowers when Mark called her name. When she turned around, he was standing there holding a small box. Her first reaction wasn't excitement. It was fear, a tiny, automatic reaction she couldn't control. Mark saw it immediately. He lowered the box. "Hey!" Emily looked at him. "I'm sorry. Don't apologize." She took a breath. "I didn't expect that." "I know." He smiled gently. "And that's okay." That was what made the difference. He wasn't disappointed. He wasn't offended. He wasn't making her fear about him. He simply waited. After everything she had been through, that small act of patience meant more than any grand gesture. "I love you," Mark said. Emily felt tears in her eyes. "I love you too." He smiled. "Will you marry me?" She looked at the man in front of her. The man who had never demanded trust. The man who had earned it. Yes. This time, when she said yes, she wasn't ignoring warning signs. She wasn't hoping someone would become the person she needed them to be. She knew exactly who he was. And she knew exactly who she was. Planning the wedding was surprisingly easy. Emily had once believed weddings were supposed to be huge celebrations. A statement. A performance. Proof that everything was perfect. Now she wanted something completely different. Small. Honest. Real. There were no hundreds of guests. No complicated seating charts. No worrying about who might argue. Just the people who had stood beside her through the hardest years. Her parents. A few close friends. And Mark's family, who welcomed her as if she had always belonged. Even choosing a dress felt different. The first time, the dress had represented a future she thought she was guaranteed. This time, it represented a choice she was making freely. The morning of the wedding, Emily stood in front of the mirror. For a moment, memories returned. Not painful ones, just memories. The first dress, the first wedding, the day everything changed. She expected fear. Instead, she felt calm. Her mother came into the room and immediately knew what she was thinking. "You okay?" Emily smiled. "Yeah." Her mother looked at her carefully. "Really?" Emily nodded. "Really?" Her mother hugged her. "I'm proud of you." Emily closed her eyes. For years she had thought surviving meant simply getting through each day. She hadn't realized one day she would look back and see how far she had traveled. The ceremony was held outdoors in the garden of a small country venue. The weather was perfect. Max, wearing a small bow tie, was given an important role, although everyone agreed his main achievement was staying still long enough for photographs. When Emily walked towards Mark, she noticed something. He looked nervous, not because he was unsure, because he understood how important this was. He understood that this wasn't just a wedding. It was proof that she had found her way back to happiness. When they exchanged vows, Mark didn't promise her a perfect life. He promised honesty. He promised kindness. He promised that no matter what happened, they would always face it together. Emily knew those were the vows that mattered. Years passed. A life grew around them. The cottage became a little bigger. The garden became fuller. Max grew older but never lost his enthusiasm for walks. Emily and Mark created the kind of ordinary moments she once thought she had lost forever. Sunday breakfasts, evening walks, unexpected laughter, arguments about silly things that ended with apologies. A real life, not a perfect one, a real one, and that was better. Sometimes Emily wondered what would have happened if the wedding years earlier had gone ahead. She wondered who she would have become, but she never wondered if she would have been happy, because she knew the truth. The The person she was before the betrayal would never have discovered how strong she could be. The life she had now only existed because she had been forced to start again. It was strange. The worst day of her life had eventually led her to the best. One autumn afternoon, while shopping in town, Emily stopped outside a cafe. Through the window, she noticed someone familiar. An older woman sitting alone with a cup of tea. Someone she hadn't seen in years. Daniel's mother. Emily stood frozen for a moment. She considered walking away, but something made her step inside. The older woman looked up. Recognition appeared instantly. Emily? Emily nodded. Hello. For a few seconds, neither woman knew what to say. Then Daniel's mother reached for her hand. I always wondered if I would ever see you again. Emily sat down. Neither of them knew it yet, but that conversation would bring the final piece of the past back into Emily's life. For a few moments, neither woman spoke. The cafe was filled with ordinary sounds. Cups being placed on tables. Quiet conversations. The hiss of the coffee machine. It felt strange to Emily that the world could continue so normally while she sat across from someone connected to the most painful chapter of her life. Daniel's mother looked older. Not just because of time, because of everything she had carried. I've wanted to contact you so many times, she said. Emily looked down at her hands. Why didn't you? The older woman sighed. Because I didn't know if you wanted to hear from anyone connected to that time. Emily appreciated the honesty. I probably didn't. A sad smile crossed her face. I don't blame you. For years, Emily had imagined this meeting. She imagined anger. She imagined questions. She imagined finally saying everything she had kept inside. But sitting there now, she realized she didn't need to. The anger had already left. How are you? Daniel's mother asked. It was such a simple question. But Emily knew what she really meant. Are you okay after everything? Did you survive? Did it ruin your life? Emily smiled slightly. I'm good. The older woman looked surprised. Really? Emily nodded. I'm married. A small smile appeared. I'm happy. For a moment, sadness and relief crossed the older woman's face at the same time. I always hoped you would be. Emily looked out of the window. I didn't think I would be. They talked for nearly an hour. Not about the wedding. Not at first. They talked about life. The cottage. The garden. Mark. The dog. Daniel's mother laughed when she heard about Max. He sounds like a character. He is. Emily smiled. He's convinced the whole village belongs to him. For the first time in years, they shared a genuine laugh. Then the conversation became quieter. More serious. Daniel's mother wrapped both hands around her cup. There is something I need to tell you. Emily immediately knew. Something in her expression changed. What is it? The older woman took a breath. Daniel died. The words didn't make sense at first. Emily simply stared. What? He died last year. A silence followed. What happened? Daniel's mother looked down. It was a helicopter accident. Emily felt a strange emptiness. Not the pain she expected. Not the heartbreak from years ago. Just shock. Was he alone? She nodded. He was the only fatality. Emily didn't know what emotion she was supposed to feel. She thought she should be devastated. After all, Daniel had once been the person she planned to spend her entire life with. But the woman sitting in the cafe wasn't the same woman who had stood outside that church. She wasn't waiting for an apology. She wasn't hoping for answers. She wasn't the person Daniel had left behind. She was someone who had built a whole new life. I didn't know whether to tell you, his mother continued. I thought maybe you had moved on and hearing his name would hurt. Emily was quiet. It does hurt. The older woman looked at her sadly. But not in the way you think. Emily looked at the rain beginning outside. I think I'm sad for the people we were. A tear rolled down her cheek. Not for the life we had. Before they left, Daniel's mother reached into her handbag. She pulled out a small envelope. I found this when I was sorting through some things. Emily hesitated. What is it? A letter. From Daniel? She nodded. I never read it. Emily looked at the envelope. She wasn't sure she wanted to open it. Part of her wanted to leave the past exactly where it belonged, behind her, but another part wondered if after all these years, she deserved to know what he had wanted to say. She took it. Thank you. Outside the cafe, Emily stood for a moment holding the envelope. She thought about the girl she had been, the woman in the wedding dress, the woman who believed her life was over. She thought about everything that happened after. The cottage, the garden, Mark, Max, the life she had built. When she returned home, Mark was outside with the dog. Max immediately ran towards her. Someone missed you, Mark said. Emily smiled. She looked at the two of them. Her family, her real family, the life she had chosen. That night, she placed the unopened letter in a drawer, not because she was afraid, because for the first time, she knew she didn't need answers to be happy, but eventually she would open it. And when she did, she would finally understand the one thing she had spent years wondering. Why? For 3 days, the letter sat in the drawer. Emily saw it every time she opened the cabinet. Every morning when she reached for her coffee mug. Every evening when she put away the dishes. She told herself she wasn't avoiding it. She was simply choosing the right moment. But deep down, she knew why she hadn't opened it. A letter from Daniel was a doorway, and she wasn't sure she wanted to walk back into that room. Mark noticed. Of course he noticed. He always noticed the small things. You've been quiet, he said one evening. They were sitting in the garden. Max was asleep at their feet, occasionally twitching as he dreamed about chasing something. Emily looked towards the house. Daniel's mother found me. Mark didn't react with shock. He simply waited. She told me he died. The silence between them was gentle, not uncomfortable. I'm sorry, Mark said. Emily nodded. I thought I would feel something different. What do you feel? She thought about it. Sad. A pause. But not because I want him back. Mark reached over and took her hand. That's okay. I feel guilty. Why? Because someone died. Mark looked at her carefully. Emily, you can feel sadness for someone without wanting them back in your life. She looked at him. You really believe that? Yes. He smiled slightly. You don't have to choose between remembering the past and loving the present. Those words stayed with her. That night, Emily took the envelope from the drawer. She sat at the kitchen table. The same table where she had once planned a wedding. The same table where she had cried after losing everything. But this time she wasn't broken. She carefully opened the letter. Inside was a single sheet of paper. The handwriting was unmistakably Daniel's. She took a deep breath and began to read. Emily, I don't know if you will ever read this. Part of me hopes you don't, because I know I don't deserve the chance to explain myself. But part of me needs you to know that I never stopped knowing what I did was wrong. Emily paused. She expected anger. Instead, she felt strangely calm. She continued, I spent a long time trying to convince myself that things were complicated, that I was confused, that I could somehow keep everyone from getting hurt. The truth is simpler. I was selfish. I hurt the person who trusted me most. There is no excuse for that. Emily looked away from the page. Years ago, those words might have made her furious. Now they only made her tired, because she had already learned the lesson Daniel was only learning too late. Sorry didn't repair everything. Sometimes sorry was just an admission that the damage had already been done. She continued reading. I want you to know something. The years we had together were real. I did love you. I know that might not mean anything now, and I understand why. But I hope one day you can remember that before I failed you. There were moments where I truly made you happy. I hope you find someone who gives you the life I should have given you. Emily stopped reading. She wiped away a tear. Not because she wanted him back. Because she finally accepted something she had struggled with for years. The happy memories weren't fake. They had happened. They just weren't the whole story. The final lines were the hardest. I heard you got the cottage. I'm glad. You always wanted a place with a garden. I hope you sit outside every morning and drink your coffee somewhere peaceful. I hope someone loves you the way you deserve. I'm sorry I wasn't that person. Daniel. Emily folded the letter carefully. She didn't burn it. She didn't tear it up. She placed it back inside the envelope, because it belonged to her past, and she no longer needed to destroy her past to protect her future. The following weekend, Emily visited Daniel's mother. Not because she felt she had to, because she wanted to. They sat together in the garden with tea. For the first time, they spoke openly about everything. About the wedding, about the betrayal, about the years afterwards. I always wondered if you hated us, Daniel's mother admitted. Emily shook her head. No, she looked at the flowers. I hated what happened. There is a difference. The older woman nodded. I wish I could have protected you. Emily smiled sadly. You couldn't. A pause. But thank you for wishing you could. When Emily returned home, Mark was waiting with Max by the front door. The dog immediately ran to greet her. She laughed as he nearly knocked her over. Still dramatic, I see. Mark smiled. He's been waiting all day. Emily looked around. Her home, her husband, her dog, her life. Years ago, she thought losing Daniel was the end of her story. She finally understood. It had only been the end of that chapter, not the whole book.